But starting with number 12, it's one of our new names for this week. We've got 4-star offensive lineman Terence Ferguson. That guy's out of Peach County in Fort Valley, Georgia. Rated as one of the top 70 prospects in the nation. Been a prospect on the radar for the 2021 class for quite some time. One of the things I'm most impressed with about Terence Ferguson is he was a guy that was known as a freshman. When he was a teammate of Kearis Jackson way back in the 2017 season, Kearis was a 2018 recruit, and you already saw Terence Ferguson was going to be a guy to watch. And the main thing that happens sometimes is players stop growing. They stop developing. Maybe they get a little satisfied. And maybe those guys that we thought were going to be great as freshmen don't turn out to be great as seniors. But with Terence Ferguson, that's certainly not the case. He's going to flash at tackle and at guard. He can play both ways. He took those key back-to-back visits in January. When he could have shopped around and saw a lot of junior days, he went to Georgia on 2 consecutive junior days. Matt Luke has made him a priority. That's why he checks in this week at number 12 on our top targets list. Next up on our top targets for this week, we've got a new name. This is out of Newton High School. I believe he's visiting Georgia today, if memory serves. Visited Auburn earlier this week. He's visiting Georgia today. That's Nylund Green out of Newton High. That's the same program which produced J.J. Holloman in Covington, Georgia. 4-star cornerback, 6'2 plus, size, length, speed. He's really worked himself out hard and developed his body very well over the last couple of years. He was another guy we noticed really early at some of those MVP camps, and we wondered, is this guy going to keep getting better? And Nylund Green certainly has. He makes his debut on our 2021 top targets list at number 11. You look at Nylund Green, and he's a guy that has the length, he has the speed, he has the size, mostly centered around a lot of Southeast schools that are kind of his major contenders, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Auburn, schools like that. Those are the schools that seem to resonate right now with Nylund Green. Next up on our top targets list is a name that's been there for a while. We're going to call him the chef here on Before the Hedges. That's Dallas Turner. Broward County, Class 1A to 5A, Defensive Player of the Year as a junior. Played for American Heritage last year. This year he's going to play for St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel named Dallas Turner as their 1A, 5A Defensive Player of the Year. The reason we call him the chef is Dallas Turner likes to cook baked goods in his spare time. That's a guy that we spoke to earlier in the on one of our earlier hedges earlier this year. Dallas Turner recently established his top 10. Georgia was in there. It appears to me like Georgia and Florida are recruiting Dallas the hardest. Georgia definitely has needs at the outside linebacker position, defensive end position for the 2021 cycle. Like I said earlier, Florida and Georgia seem to be hitting him up the most. He had a great visit to Georgia in January for a junior day. He did feel like Georgia was making him a true priority. Next up on our list, Arizona, Swaro High School's Quinton Somerville. Defensive end. That's a guy Georgia's looking at defensive end. He had a great first visit. You go back with Quinton Somerville, you got to remember, he told us that when he was 6, 7, 8 years old, he was watching Georgia games. He was watching that wonderful, beautiful stadium. He was watching A.J. Green make plays way out in Arizona and always dreamed. That kind of filled up the dream tank for him a little bit. And Quinton Somerville thought about Georgia, thought that would be great if he would ever be recruited to be able to play at a place like this. And here's where a couple of coincidences start lining up. Not only that from a young man out in Arizona, but his teammate, Keely Ringo, 5-star signee for Georgia in the 2020 class. He's coming to Georgia. So that automatically creates more inroads there for Georgia. He had a great first visit to Georgia in January. It's really neat. Georgia offered him in early January. Approximately 16 days later, Quinton Somerville was there with his family in Athens for a junior day. They brought his younger sister along, who's actually a student trainer. Pretty deft move for Georgia and the recruiting staff, how they were able to get his young sister, who aspires to be an athletic trainer one day, in a room with Ron Corson, Georgia's Hall of Fame athletic trainer. And those little things where Kirby Smart and the Georgia staff show they have their stuff together, really goes a long way on the recruiting trail. Next up, number 8, we got a wide receiver. Moving on up the list, kind of George Jefferson style on our Before the Hedges top targets list this week. That is Mario Williams. Mario Williams is out of Plant City, Florida. He's a baseball player and a receiver. Top 4 receiver in the class. Had a great junior day visit to Georgia in January. He was there when Brock Vandegrift was there. He was there when Amarius Mims was there. Been talking to Brock Vandegrift for some time. Brock was actually recruiting a guy like Mario who can make so many plays in space to join him when he was still committed to Oklahoma. Mario Williams, if you watch this week coming out of the Tampa Plant area, playing baseball. It's baseball season already in Florida. Mario Williams hit a home run last night over the right field wall, I believe. Wants to play football and baseball wherever he may be. Georgia's a school which is standing out for him in the 2021 class. Next up, number 7 is Smile Munden Jr. Smiles, who we spoke to last week on Before the Hedges. We had one of those DawgNation conversations with Smile Munden Jr. He's out of Dallas, Georgia, Paulding County High School. He's in no certain hurry to make up his decision. He wants to make his decision after his senior year. Sounds like to me, Smile's just a good dude, want to keep recruiters coming around, want to keep recruiters checking out his high school program. Look at him right there on that jet sweep. Reminder, this is a 6'3", 218-pound linebacker who can triple jump about 48, 49 feet. That's the goal for him this spring during track season. Smile Munden Jr. will enroll early. He's a 5-star linebacker, currently rated as the nation's number 2 or 3 outside linebacker. Georgia sees him as an inside linebacker. They're making him a priority as well. That's why he shows up on the top targets list. Look for Georgia to get maybe 2 or 3 inside linebackers in this class because they didn't get anybody a year ago. Smile Munden Jr., the 5-star linebacker out of Paulding County Jr. He was the guy that shows up at number 7 on our list. Number 6, everybody starts wondering about running backs in the 2021 class for Georgia. That's Travion Henderson out of Hopewell, Virginia. Travion just won the state championship, the Class 3A state championship in Virginia out of Hopewell. He ran a 6.48, 55-meter indoor right there. That was moving it. He had a goal to be a 6'3", didn't quite get to that. Now, Travion Henderson, if you look at his film, filthy. He's making plays everywhere. A couple of plays we'll break down later on DawgNation about Travion Henderson's film that we like really so well. Looks like a touchdown machine for his high school team. There was some early evaluations on him, especially his junior year. Some schools were wondering, was he a linebacker? Was he a safety? Clemson actually thinks Travion Henderson is a safety. But he's already established he's going to take official visits to Texas and Oklahoma this spring. He took a big visit to Georgia for a junior day in January. That also went well for Travion Henderson. There's some ties there between Georgia and Henderson that we'll detail a little bit down the road when we start really writing a lot about Travion Henderson. But right now, really good film, explosive type back. He checks in at number 6 on our top targets list so far on Before the Hedges for 2021. Now, the next page, the next slide, another running back. Running back's got to be a priority for Georgia in the 2021 cycle. They took 2 last year. Look for them to try to take 2 again in this class. Evan Pryor, he's out of Amos A. Hugh High School. Recently established his top 6. Told me recently that he's got 3 of his official visits planned out. He wants to keep his exact timing on those official visits on the low, but he plans to visit North Carolina, Ohio State, and Georgia this month. Those are his 3 official visits. Wants to make his college decision sometime in April. He ballparked April. Now, there's some reports out there from some very good reporters that had him wanting to make his decision on April the 7th. Kind of backed off that when I spoke to Evan Pryor late last week. The month of April seems like just a ballpark month. We wrote about that visit plan there for Evan Pryor in the month of March. He's going to have a busy March now that the visits are back on. I think it's very smart what Evan Pryor's doing right now because a lot of folks in the recruiting industry are wondering, where Evan is for Georgia. Is he number 1? Is he number 2, number 3 on the board? Is Evan Pryor number 1, number 2, number 3 on the board for like a Penn State, an Ohio State? There are other guys that they're going to show up on this list as well. That some schools like this guy better, some schools like this guy better. The one thing Evan Pryor is doing that's really smart to me is he's just going to try and make his decision early. So when he can lock down a spot, because he knows some schools will take him. Georgia has told him he has a committable offer anytime he's ready. And he wants to go ahead and get in a class, get in a program that he feels a good fit with, maybe perhaps maybe before 2 or 3 of those other committable offers make their decision. So big props there to Evan Pryor, how he's moving quickly with his recruiting pace to make sure he ends up in an enviable school type position. Number 4 on our list is Barrett Carter, North Gwinnett High School. He's fluctuated between 2, 3, and 4 on our list for quite some time. Another inside linebacker, an ideal inside linebacker target for Georgia in the class. Something cool, I don't know, we didn't have this on video for our online chatter this week. Wish I would have remembered it, but Barrett Carter was teaching tackling to some local high school kids down in the North Gwinnett school zone. He had a neat little way to do it. He teaching them how to wrap up, lead with their head, heads up tackling, hit with your head, lead with your eyes. But then he had this thing called garbage up. When you lock in a guy, go garbage up. And I was asking him, who teaches you that? And that, of course, would have to be the incomparable Bill Stewart at North Gwinnett High, the head coach there. Fantastic football mind. I think Bill Stewart's good enough to be a college coach right now, but the way he was taught to tackle by Bill Stewart at North Gwinnett was garbage up. So, folks, next time you want to teach your kids how to tackle, you want to tackle like in my mind, an elite linebacker, an All-American linebacker, a 5-star linebacker in my mind. Think about that term, garbage up, like you're hoisting a can of garbage right there. That's how Barrett Carter was taught to do it, and he does that very, very well. A heck of a player for North Gwinnett High School. Barrett Carter recently established his top 11, and Georgia was clearly in there. Georgia has made him feel like a priority for the longest time. Number 3 on our list, this was a guy that took a dip off last week's show. I'm certain it kind of raised some eyebrows a little bit. That's 5-star James Williams. Really nothing that, alarming or any sort of trending away from Georgia here. He's a 6'4.5", 6'5" safety. Keeps visiting the University of Georgia. He's the nation's number 1 overall prospect at safety for the 2021 class. He named his top 3 recently of Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. Georgia still seems to be the school that gets all the enviable visits there for James Williams. In Miami, he's actually moving back to American Heritage, where he started out his high school career for his senior season. James Williams, an All-American safety in every sense of the term right there. Ball skills, he's got length, he's a smart player. He supports his other players on the field. James Williams, I think he ranks number 6 in the country right now, maybe 5 in the country overall for the 2021 class, a clear 5-star in anyone's book right there, especially given the size. Number 2 is Amarius Mims out of Cochran, Georgia. That's Bleckley County High School. Von Lassiter coaches him. Von Lassiter is a former high school coach at Jake Fromm at Houston County. Amarius Mims, 6'7.5". Lots of schools are on him. Georgia had made some key moves in the month of January where when Sam Pittman left, Georgia fell behind Alabama and LSU. Quickly, Georgia was able to catch right back up and get nose-to-nose with both those schools. Matt Luke is doing a great job recruiting him. Brock Vandegrift's doing a great job recruiting him. Georgia, although they went crazy good in the 2020 class with tackles with guys like Tate Ratledge, Broderick Jones, Chad Lindbergh, Devin Willock. They still got to keep hitting that offensive line position. Georgia wants to restock with elite tackles every year. You look at Amarius Mims. Some guys you look at prospects and you go, is that guy a right tackle? Is that guy a left tackle? Amarius Mims, by anyone's standard, is a left tackle. Played tight end mostly exclusively at Bleckley County as a sophomore. And then last year, you see some of that early film from him last year. He was a left tackle for Bleckley County as a junior. Got one more year. I think he does plan to enroll early as well. Clear priority for Georgia. Been a priority for Georgia for the longest time. And we have a constant number 1, a repeat number 1 on our list. That's Tony Grimes, the 5-star out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, the 757. We had a DawgNation conversation with Tony Grimes. He was our second Before the Hedges podcast where we got to speak to Tony Grimes. number 1 cornerback in the country, number 6 overall prospect. Georgia's already getting an official visit from him. Georgia went from right at his top 13, outside his top 13, to getting an official visit from Tony Grimes, with just one unofficial visit to Georgia in from the class of 2021. You've got Tony Grimes out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Wouldn't it be something if Georgia would be able to pair up a Keely Ringo, the number 1 corner from the 2020 class, and then come back in the next cycle and sign Tony Grimes, the number 1 cornerback from the 2021 class as well. I think that would start the ball rolling, and a lot of folks, a lot of recruits, a lot of people starting to think whether or not Georgia is clearly moving into that DBU territory, maybe as the elite DBU of this 2 or 3, 4-year recruiting span so far. That's your top targets for 2021, brought to you by those good folks at Kroger. Now's the part of our program where we take a look at the other guys popping up and really showing that we're considering and watching who's trending for Georgia in some ways as well. It's a big list. It keeps growing. I think we have 3 or 4 names we took off. We have 3 or 4 names we add to it. 2021's top targets, let's go through a bunch of them. Brock Bowers, that's the speedy 4.55, 215-pound tight end out of Napa in California. Isaiah Brevard is a big receiver out of Mississippi. At one point in January, Georgia was his leader. New name this week is Corey Collier. That's a safety out of Miami. Miami Palmetto High School. I believe he ranks as a top 50, top 60 prospect, and the number 4 or 5 safety in the country. Donovan Edwards is one of those running backs I want to take some time to talk about right here. He's out of Michigan. He did visit Georgia. He visited Georgia when Evan Pryor visited. They both visited together. Strong relationships there for Edwards with schools like Michigan and Ohio State. It's going to be one of those factors Georgia will have to overcome if they want to sign Donovan Edwards in that class. But it's another big back, physical back, handles his business in the classroom. Also rated as, I believe, the nation's number 2 or 3 running back in the country. Georgia only has about 5 or 6 running backs that they're targeting in the 2021 cycle, and Donovan Edwards also belongs on that list. Let's go through that list a little bit more. Isaiah Johnson, that's the cornerback out of West Virginia. At one point, he was a 5-star. He dipped with the latest 24/7 Sports Composite. 3-star Tyrion Ingram Dawkins out of Gaffney, South Carolina. You'll see some more on him as a good visual of Tyrion Ingram Dawkins out of South Carolina later on our program during our online chatter, but that's a 3-star defensive tackle. Just visited Georgia. That's another name. Everybody's telling me, like, Jeff, who are the D linemen? Who are those big guys in the trenches? Because right now the class is heavy on a lot of certain positions. Our top targets list is heavy on a lot of certain positions, but maybe not at the defensive line just yet. Another defensive lineman is Tim Keenan. We're going to read about him this week on DawgNation.com. 4-star offensive tackle Micah Morris, name that shows up in this 2020 top targets for quite some time. Kody Brown, that's the 4.0, great running back out of Parkview High School. 4-star linebacker Chaz Chambliss, he's out of Carrollton High School, Carrollton, Georgia. 4-star linebacker Ranieria Dilworth, very close to making our, if I had to go one more name, top 13 type name, it would be Dilworth. Out of North Carolina. Just took an unofficial visit to Georgia. Going to hear from him in our program shortly. 4-star wide receiver Ajayi Hall, recently named his top 4. That was LSU, Alabama, Georgia, and Arizona State. Be very interesting to see how all those schools feel about him when he tries to make his commitment later this month. He's down to a Final 4. There's no Clemson in there. There's no Oklahoma in there. There's no Florida. There's no Miami in there. Very interesting how he's really whittled down his contenders list really quickly. I think Ajayi Hall made a great move with his career by moving to IMG Academy. He'll get competition, he'll get discipline, he'll get structure. I think that'll help him a lot with that spring evaluations when everybody wants to see how much better Ajayi Hall has gotten at the receiver position already during his first few months there at IMG Academy. Going back to that list, we got a few more names I want to click off. One of the names is Jordan Hancock, high-rising defensive back, cornerback, Barrett Carter's teammate out of North Gwinnett High School. 4-star defensive end Elijah Judy. Now, that's another name. Elijah Judy is at a Northeast High School in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Took a junior day visit to Georgia. Georgia's going to get an official visit from Elijah Judy coming up in the month of April. The dead period lifted, so now we're in a quiet period, and that means that recruits can visit. Recruiters cannot see them off campus, though. But then in April becomes a month where those new NCAA rules that kind of ramped up, redefined what the recruiting calendar looked like for Power 5 programs, those football bowl subdivision programs, and start taking those first official visits in April. It's very interesting when we go back to Evan Pryor a little bit. Evan Pryor, that speedy running back out of North Carolina. Evan was taking some big visits in March, plans to visit in April, and he's not even using those official visits at this time. The next name on our list, I think that's the last name on our list. We might have another slide, but that's Moliki Matavio. That's another huge tight end, 6'7" tight end out of Nevada. Georgia did very well in the 2020 cycle, landing 5-star athlete. Darnell Washington out of Nevada. Can Georgia go back-to-back? Moliki Matavio is another one of those size guys with a lot of athleticism. I think a player parallel, not quite Theo Johnson-like, but certainly along that realm. Filling out the list, there's Javari Ritzy. Like this young man a lot. Runs track. He's a guy that is a teammate with Ra Dilworth. 5-star running back Will Shipley. Clemson, Notre Dame, those schools are hot and heavy there with Shipley as well. Shipley had always been in our top targets list for 2021. Kept him there at number 12 for quite some time, but I think right now that just off the cusp place is a good spot to put Shipley. 4-star outside linebacker Avian Sori. He's a new guy this week. He's out of Graceville, Florida. Just took another unofficial visit to Georgia when it went really well. Avian Sori is a basketball player and explosive, really quick guy coming off the edge. Jaden Thomas is a name we've seen a lot out of Pace Academy as a wide receiver target for Georgia in this 2021 class. And the final name is a 4-star cornerback, Dijon Nugget Warren. Now, Dijon is going to remind folks a little bit of that DJ Daniels story for Georgia in the 2019 recruiting class. I'm saying that because Dijon is a junior college prospect. He's the number 2 overall junior college prospect right now for the 2021 cycle on 24/7 Sports. He's about 6'1", he's about 180. I like this guy's film a lot. Started talking about him a little bit today on the DawgNation forum in that Hurry Up Intel thread. Showed his film. Really deliberate, physical, fast player. He'll strike you. Dijon Warren is a guy to know. He's a guy that you sit there looking at. Been hearing his name for a couple weeks now, but Mr. Warren, a nugget on Mr. Warren is, could Georgia go back and get another 2 years and done type player, or maybe a one and done type player for I think his Huddle profile page lists a 4.4 or below time in the laser 40. So there you go, a junior college name, very interesting there, especially a cornerback added to the 2021 top target